Welcome to Todd Talk. Today I want to tell you about the camping trip I just went on.
Todd Talk is brought to you by Chip Chap. Get social.
Normally I post these Todd Talks on the first of each month, but on the first of the month I was camping. And I went camping at a place that I've been many times. It's a state campground on the southern Oregon coast called Sunset Bay. And I've been going there since I was a grade schooler. My family and I would go camping there when we were growing up, and each summer we'd kind of spend some time cooking on a fire and playing on the beach and all that. And as I got older, I stopped going for a while, and then several years ago kind of rediscovered it. And I just really like it out there. The geology is very dramatic. The weather is usually pretty mild. Just a really relaxing and very fun place. So sometimes I go by myself, sometimes I go with friends. This time my mom came with me. And I would describe this as car camping. So there is running water, there are bathrooms, but you sleep in a tent, you cook on a fire. It's about as close as roughing it as I get anymore. Sunset Bay itself is actually pretty small. I would say, a little bigger than maybe a football field, but it's really gorgeous. Really kind of calm waters where people will go paddleboarding and kind of, play out there. There's this island out there that I've always been fascinated with, and I hope someday to maybe get a kayak or something and go out there because I've just always wanted to go check it out. This year the weather was pretty great when we got there, and when the weather's great, you actually get a sunset. And the reason they call it Sunset Bay is because when the sun goes down, it just kind of goes right down the middle of that bay, and it's really a great picture opportunity. And I've taken probably hundreds of pictures of sunsets there. A little later, we had a fire, we cooked some hot dogs, and we called it a night. So the next day we got up and we went on a hike. One thing that's really cool about this place is there's a lot of history there. There was a guy whose name was Simpson, and he was a kind of lumber baron about 100 years ago. And he had a mansion out here in the middle of the forest. Kind of a Great Gatsby situation where you can imagine people riding their horse buggies or driving their little cars through these dirt roads to get out to this giant mansion where there were, ballrooms and things like that. He lived out there in this really gorgeous giant mansion for a long time, and then there was a fire, it burned down. He ended up donating the land to the state, and that's how it became a state park. And behind the mansion, there was a garden, like a formal garden, and it is still there. The garden's called Shore Acres, and the state still takes care of it. They have a, gardener, and the rangers take care of it, and it's absolutely gorgeous. There's a rose test garden there. They do a lot of holiday and seasonal events there, and it's just a really strange thing to see this massive formal garden in the middle of this forest. Where the mansion stood was a really picturesque cliff above the ocean, and right there on the cliffs there's still evidence of where the mansion was. You can see the old tennis courts where they used to play, and it's just right there along the ocean. A little later that afternoon I went climbing around, explored some of the tide pools. When the tide goes out, there's a lot of stuff to explore. It's pretty cool, and because it was a full moon, the tides were pretty extreme, so it was a pretty low tide. It can be a little bit slippery and precarious, but if you're careful, you can get pretty far out there, and there's all kinds of cool stuff to check out. We had another great sunset that second night, and that was pretty much it. The next day we got up and we went crabbing, which is something we've always done every year whenever we go to Sunset Bay. We just go off a dock and throw a couple of crab rings in there. Usually we hang out for a couple of hours. This time we hung out for a long time, almost, I think, 5 hours. And we weren't having a lot of luck. We did catch a few, but I also got a really massive sunburn, which was pretty miserable. Took the crabs back to camp, cleaned them up, cooked them up, and we ate them. Not only was it a full moon, but it was a blue moon and a super moon. It was as close as the moon's going to get to the Earth this year, and it was the second full moon of the month, which makes it a blue moon, which is a cool thing as well. At night, it was really bright and really massive in the sky, which was a cool thing to see. That night, it got a little bit drizzly, and in the morning we woke up and there was rain, which is always a drag. We had set up an awning, so at least while we were eating, we weren't getting all miserable and wet. That afternoon, we drove a little bit south into Bandon. Along the way, we stopped at one of the lighthouses that is along the Oregon coast, and we sort of checked it out. Just a little thing, and a lot of history going on there, which was kind of cool. I had never bothered to go out there, so that was kind of fun. And then in Bandon, we had lunch at Tony's Crab Shack, and I had some fish tacos, which were really good. Bandon's just kind of a little tiny touristy town. They have a cheese factory that we stopped at. They have some, taffy and fudge candy factories, stuff like that. Although things were a little bit damp, I managed to make a fire, we had dinner, and we called it a night. Next day was a little bit foggy, and we kind of cleaned up, packed up, and then we drove back home. And that was my camping vacation. We're pretty fortunate here in the Pacific Northwest as far as camping goes, or the outdoors. If you're into the beach or the rivers or the mountains or the high desert or the forests, we've kind of got it all up here. Every year I tell myself I need to do more camping. That being said, I usually go to the same places year after year, just kind of a creature of habit. Anyway, that's my Todd Talk. If you have camping suggestions, leave me a comment. I definitely want to check some new things out.